Good evening. Once again, we return to the story of Caius, Spellsor,
Was he moved?
Dunmer, Eternal Champion, former agent of the Emperor,
Yes, Outlander. What do you want?
current leader of the Blades in Vardenfell.
Yes, Outlander. What do you want?
And we're on our way to try and find the lost prophecies, but I should take a quick minute here and see what my log says.
Vivrana Aron, monk of Holamayan, says that I will find Mira Milo in the monastery here, on this island. A stone pathway north from the docks leads uphill to the entrance to Holamayan, but the portal opens only at dusk and dawn. The magical twilight hour is sacred to Azura. I will find Mira Milo in the library with Master Barleo. Later, Vivrana Arion can rearrange for my return to Vivek whenever I'm ready.
So it looks like we'll have a little while to explore if I'm so inclined. Nice. Looks like there's more than one path. So if I wanted, I could obviously just stay and wait. Actually, it looks like I'm competing a little bit with the volume. I don't think I have any way of turning it down without resetting the broadcast, though. I also don't have a way of determining what time it is, or how close to dawn or dusk it is. So I think I'll do a little exploring. Well, we can't be waiting that long for the appropriate hour. never seen a stealth skeleton before. Alright, so again, we're just looking for something to do while we wait. Just gonna try something very quickly. Sorry, I just got a message and I forgot to turn off my status. I'll drop it if I have something better, but might be worth something. Whoops.
Death blow of Abernanet with explains by the sage Geocrates Varnus, broken battlements and wrecked walls, where worship of the horror once embraced the bites of 50 winters, frost and wind, have cracked and pitted the unholy gates, and brought down the cruel obscene spire. All is dust, all is nothing more than dust. The blood has dried and screams have echoed out. Framed by hills in the wildest forlorn place of Morrowind sits the barren bones of Abernanet. When thrice-blessed Rangdigils first saw Abernanet, it burnished silver bright with power and permanence, a dreadful place with dreadful men to guard it. With fever-glassed eyes and strength through the horror, Rangadil saw the foe's number was far greater than the few ordinators and buoyant armigers he led, watching from the hills above the field and castle of death. While it stood, it damned the souls of the people of Morrowind, a cursed, iniquitous castle, Abernanet. The alarum was sounding, the holy warriors to battle, to answer villainy shield with justice's spear, to steel themselves, to fight at the front and be brave. Rangadil, too, grasped his shield and his thin ebon spear, and the clamor of the battle began with a resounding clash, to shake the clouds down from the sky. The shield wall was smashed and blood staunched, the ground of the field a battle like no other of Morrowind to destroy the evil of Abernanet. The maniacal horde were skilled at arms for certes, but the three holy fists of Mother, Lord, and Wizard pushed the monster's army back in charge after charge. Rangadil saw from above, urging the army to defend Dagon Thras, himself in his pernicious tower spire, and knew that only when the heart of evil was caught would the land e'er be truly saved. He pledged then by the temple and the holy tribunal of Morrowind to take the Tower of Abernanet. In a violent push, the tower base was pierced, but all efforts to fell the spire came to naught, as if the strength of the horror that held one tower. The stairwell was steep and so tight that the two warriors could not ascend it side by side. So single file, the army clambered up and up to take the tower room and end the reign of one of the cruelest petty tyrants in the annals of Morrowind, Dagon Thras of Abernanet. They awaited a victory cry from the first to scale the tower, but silence only returned, and then the blood. First only a rivulet, and then a scarlet course poured down from the steep stairwell, with the cry from above, "Dagon Thras is besting our army one by one." Rangadil called his army back, every ordinator in a buoyant armature, and he himself ascended the stairs, passing the bloody remains of the best warriors of Morrowind, to the tower room of Abernanet. Like a raven of death on its eyrie was Dagon Thras, holding a bloody shield and bloody blade at the tower room's door. Every thrust of Rangadil's spear was blocked with ease. Every slash of Rangadil's blade was deflected away. Every blow of Rangadil's mace was met by the shield. Every quick arrow shot could find no purchase, for the monster's greatest power was in his dread blessing, that no weapon from no warrior found in all of Morrowind could pass the shield of Abernanet. As hour past hour, Rangadil came to understand how his greatest warriors met their end with Dagon Thras, for he could exhaust them by blocking their attacks, and then, thus weakened, they were simply cut down. The villain was patient and skilled with a shield, and Rangadil felt his own mighty arms growing numb, while Dagon Thras anticipated and blocked each cut, and Rangadil feared that without the blessing of the Divine Three of Morrowind, he'd die in the Tower of Abernanet. But he still poured down blows as he yelled, "Foe, I am Rangadil, the prince of the true temple, and I've fought in many a battle and many a warrior. He has tried to stop my blade and has failed. Very few can anticipate which blow I'm planning, and fewer, knowing that, know how to arrest the design, or to have the strength to absorb all of my strikes. There's no greater master of shield blocking in all of Morrowind than here in the castle of Abernanet. My foe, Dark Lord Dagon Thras, before you slay me, I beg you, tell me how you know how to block." Wickedly proud, Dagon Thras heard Rangadil's plea, and decided that before he gutted the temple champion, he would deign to give him some knowledge for the afterlife, how his instincts and reflexes worked, and how he started to explain. And as he started to explain, he realized that he did not know how he did it, and watched puzzled as Rangadil delivered what the tales of Morrowind called the death blow of Abernanet. The horror refers to the Daedra print Maruna's Dagon. 50 Winters suggests that the epic was written 50 years after the siege of Abernanet, which took place in 3rd Era 150. Thrice blessed Rangadil is Rangadil Kettle, born 2nd Era 803, died 3rd Era 195. He was the commander of the Temple Ordinators, and thrice blessed by being blessed by the Tribunal of Gods. Mother, Lord, and Wizard refers to the Tribunal of Almalexia, Vivek, and Sothasil. 5. Dagon Thras was a powerful Daedra worshipper of unknown origin who declared himself the heir of the 6th house, although there is little evidence he descended from the vanished family.
I should have seen if that was worth picking up. Yeah.
These will be my last words anyone these will be the last words anyone ever hears from me. Hear? That's silly of me. As if anyone will hear what I am writing. Regardless, I am a lone traveler, and never stayed put long enough to know anyone, except that lovely Mariah in Stras Mackay. She'll forever be in my heart, even in death. To see her again, or even to hear her beautiful voice, would surely allow me to die a content man. I now lay here with a broken back, unable to move, surely to be dead within hours. I take this remaining time to write a farewell to this cruel world, the very same one that allowed me to take the path of a thief, a good one at least. If ever you hear tales of Maliki the Light-Footed, you can continue the tale of how you happened across my corpse in a lowly tomb, searching for bounties so that I may feed myself. What a life I led. If you too are a common thief like myself, do yourself a favor and find another way. If I had to do it all over again, I would surely change my ways. The clawing and moaning of the ghastly undead beasts grows louder now. I fear that they have come to finish me off for good this time. Know that I shall die a painful death as an unhappy man. May the gods show pity on my soul, so I do not have to wander this plane after death.
Soul gems are always welcome. I should probably be heading back just in case I've missed the opening. I think the door's open.
You've ascended to level 30. The results of hard work and dedication always look like luck to saps, but you know you've earned every ounce of your success.
I'll sleep if I have to, but let's see if we can do anything while we wait. We'll find a place to rest. Don't quite fancy being out in the rain like this. Sorry. It occurred to me that I potentially tried to rob that. If they attack me, I'm fine with the fight, but I don't want to be the aggressor if I don't have to be. Oh, that's a shame. Stop that. Alright, I got a little more than I bargained for. See if I can find space. was so close. I feel like I should have more Daedra hearts than I do. It's a little bit of a waste, but nothing too dramatic. I thought there might be more Daedra hearts. I feel like those ashes are going to become something that I need to take care of. But again, I run into the problem of storage. Pains me to do that, but that's what I get for not paying attention. My God. doesn't say it's locked. Do a little armor repair before the fight. Still over. All right. I think we've read some of these other books before. But at this point, I am going to drop some of this stuff off back home. Alright, so, first things first. We will drop off the Daedric weapons. Definitely have some duplicates. How much is that? Yeah, 4,000 we don't have. For 2,000 I might find a place for these, but I know I'm going to be on a long journey, so I'd prefer to get some of the weight taken up. Let's do the alchemy as well. So as always, we will make the magica. Memory starves. We always bring the stone flower in because of fortified personality. See if we have any options there. Yes. So crushweed is my new favorite. And the rest at this point is really just taking advantage of whatever resources I have. So let's start with the racer plumes. Alright, train strength and restore health are my high priorities. Train fatigue and personality. Alright, restore agility, telekinesis. magicka and paralyze if I can. Close. Expensive soul gems that don't have any direct use for me. I'll have to figure out what to do with those in terms of selling them. Still gonna have to find some place to sell a lot of this, but we're getting closer to an end now. We can also get some extra space with books.
Real Baronziah, Part 5, by Anonymous. As Symmachus had predicted, the theft of the Staff of Chaos had few short-term consequences. The current emperor, Uriel Septim, sent some rather stiff messages expressing shock and displeasure at the staff's disappearance, and urging Symmachus to make every effort to locate its whereabouts and communicate developments to the newly appointed Imperial battle mage Jagar Tharn, in whose hands the matter had been placed. Tharn! Symmachus thundered in disgust and frustration as he paced about the small chamber where Baronziah, now some months pregnant, was sitting serenely embroidering a baby blanket. Jagar Tharn, indeed. Aye, I wouldn't give him directions for crossing the street, not if he were a doddering old blind sot. What do you have against him, love? I just don't trust that mongrel elf. Part dark elf, part high elf, and part of gods only know what. All the worst qualities of all his combined bloods all warrant, he snorted. No one knows much about him. Claims he was born in southern Valenwood of a wood-elven mother. Seems to have been everywhere since. Baronziah, sunk in the contentment and lassitude of her pregnancy, had only been humoring Symmachus thus far, but now she suddenly dropped her needlework and looked at him. Something had piqued her interest. Symmachus, could this Jagar Tharn have been Nightingale disguised? Symmachus thought this over before replying, Nay, my love, human blood seems to be the one missing component in Thar's ancestry. To Symmachus, Baronziah knew that was a flaw. Her husband despised wood elves as lazy thieves and high elves as effete intellectuals, but he admired humans, especially Bretons, for their combination of pragmatism, intelligence, and energy. The Nightingales of Ebonheart and of the Rathim clan, House Lalu, the House of Mora in particular, all be bound. That house has had human blood in it since her time. Ebonheart was jealous that the staff was laid there when Tiber Septim took the Horn of Summoning from us. Baronziah sighed a little. The rivalry between Ebonheart and Mournhold reached back almost to the dawn of Morrowind's history. Once the two nations had been one, all the lucrative mines held in the fief by the Rathims, whose nobility retained the high kingship of Morrowind. Ebonheart had split into two separate city-states, Ebonheart and Mournhold, where Queen Leanne's twin sons, grandsons of the legendary King Morolin, were left as joint heirs. At about the same time, the office of the High King was vacated in favor of a temporary war leader to be named by a council in times of a provincial emergency. Still, Ebonheart remained jealous of her prerogatives and as the eldest city-state of Morrowind, first among equals was the phrase its rulers often quoted, and claimed that the rightful guardianship of the Staff of Chaos should have been entrusted to its ruling house. Mornhold responded that King Morlin himself had placed the staff in the keeping of the god Effin, and Mornhold was unarguably the god's birthplace. Why not tell Jagartharn of your suspicions, then? Let him recover the thing. As long as it's safe, what does it matter who recovers it, or where it lies? Simicus stared at her without comprehension. It matters, he said softly at a while, but I suppose not that much. Aye, he added, certainly not enough for you to concern yourself further with it. You just sit there and tend to your... He smiled, and here he smiled at her wickedly. Embroidery. Baronziah flung the sampler at him. It hit Simicus square in the face, needle, thimble, and all. In a few more months, Baronziah gave birth to a fine son, whom they named Helseth. Nothing more was heard of the Staff of Chaos or of the Nightingale. If Ebonheart and the staff had the staff in its possession, they certainly did not boast of it. The years passed swiftly and happily. Helseth grew tall and strong. He was much like his father, whom he worshipped. When Helseth was 8 years old, Baronziah bore a second child, a daughter, to Simicus's lasting delight. Helseth was his pride, but little Morgaya, named for Simicus's mother, held his heart. Sadly, the birth of Morgaya was not the harbinger of better times ahead. Relations with the Empire slowly deteriorated for no apparent reason. Taxes were raised and quotas increased with each passing year. Simicus felt that the Emperor suspected him of having had a hand in the staff's disappearance and sought to prove his loyalty by making every effort to comply with the escalating demands. He lengthened working hours and raised tariffs, and even made up some of the difference from the royal exchequer and their own private holdings. But the levies multiplied, and commoners and nobles alike began to complain. It was an ominous rumble. I want you to take the city and children and journey to the imperial city, Simicus said, at last in desperation one evening after dinner. You must make the Emperor listen, else all of Mornhold will be up in revolt come spring. He grinned forcibly. You have a way with men, love. You always did. Baronziah forced a smile of her own. Even with you, I take it. Yes, especially with me, he acknowledged amiably. Both children? Baronziah looked over out a corner window where Helseth was strumming a lute and crooning a duet with his little sister. Helseth was 15 by then, Morgaya 8. They might soften his heart. Besides, it's high time Helseth was presented before the imperial court. Perhaps, but that's not your true reason. Baronziah took a deep breath and grasped the nettle. You don't think you can keep them safe here. If that's the case, then you're not safe here either. Come with us, she urged. He took her hands in his. Baronziah, my love, heart of my heart, if I leave now, there'll be nothing for us to return to. Don't worry about me. I'll be all right. I can take care of myself, and I can do better if I'm not worrying about you or the children. Baronziah laid her head against his chest. Just remember that we need you. I need you. We can do without the rest of it if we have each other. Empty hands and empty bellies are easier to bear than an empty heart. She started to cry, thinking of the Nightingale and that sordid business with the staff. My foolishness has brought all of this to pass. He smiled at her tenderly. If so, 'tis not so bad a place to be. His eyes rested indulgently on their children. None of us shall ever go without or want for anything, ever. Ever, my love, I promise you. I cost you everything once, Baronziah. I and Tiber Septim. Without my aid, the Empire would never have begun. I helped its rise. His voice hardened. I can bring about its fall. You may tell Uriel Septim that, and that my patience is not infinite. Baronziah gasped. Simicus was not given to empty threats. She'd no more imagined that he would ever turn against the Empire than that the old house wolf lying on the grate would turn on her. How? She demanded breathlessly, but he shook his head. Better that you not know, he said. Just tell him what I told you, should he prove recalcitrant, and do not fear. He's Septim enough that he will not take it out on the messenger. He smiled grimly, for if he does, if he ever harms the least hair on you, my love, or on the children, so help me all the gods of Tamriel, he'll pray that he hadn't been born. Aye, I'll hunt him down, him and his entire family, and I won't rest until the last Septim is dead. The red dark elven eyes of Simicus gleamed brightly in the ebbing firelight. I plight that oath, my love, my queen, my Baronziah. Baronziah held him as tight as she could, but in spite of the warmth in his embrace, she couldn't help shivering. Baronziah stood before the Emperor's throne, trying to explain Mornhold's straits. She'd waited weeks for an audience with Uriel Septim, having been fobbed off on this pretext or that. His Majesty is indisposed. An urgent matter demands His Excellency's attention. I'm sorry, Your Highness, there must be some mistake. Your appointment is for next week. No, see? And now it wasn't even going well. The Emperor did not even make the slightest pretense at listening to her. He hadn't invited her to sit, nor had he dismissed the children. Helseth stood still as a carven image, but little Morgaya had begun to fuss. The state of her own mind didn't help her any. Shortly upon arrival at her lodgings, the Mournholdian ambassador to the imperial city had demanded entry, bringing with him a sheaf of dispatches from Symmachus. Bad news, and plenty of it. The revolt had finally begun. The peasants had organized around a few disgruntled members of Mournhold's minor nobility, and were demanding Symmachus step down and hand over the reins of government. Only the Imperial Guard and a handful of troops whose families had been retainers of Baranzia's house for generations stood between Symmachus and the rabble. Hostilities had already broken out, but apparently Symmachus was safe and still in control. Not for long, he wrote. He entreated Baranzia to try her best with the Emperor, but in any case she was to stay in the Imperial City until he wrote to tell her that it was safe to go back with the children. She had tried to barge her way through the Imperial bureaucracy with little success. And to add to her growing panic, all news from Mournhold had come to a sudden stop. Tottering between rage at the Emperor's numerous majordomos and fear of the fate awaiting her and her family, the weeks had passed tensely, agonizingly, remorselessly. Then one day the Mournholdian ambassador came calling to tell her that she should expect news from Symmachus the following night at the latest, not through the regular channels, but by Nighthawk. Seemingly by the same stroke of luck, she was informed that same day by a clerk from the imperial court that Uriel Septim had finally consented to grant her an audience early on the morrow. The Emperor greeted the three of them when they came into the audience chamber with a too bright smile of welcome that nonetheless didn't reach his eyes. Then, as she presented her children, he had gazed at them with a fixed attention that was real, yet somehow inappropriate. Baranzia had been dealing with humans for nearly 500 years now, and had developed the skill of reading their expressions and movements that was far beyond what any human could ever perceive. Try as the Emperor might to conceal it, there was hunger in his eyes, and something else. Regret? Yes, regret, but why? He had several fine children of his own. Why covet hers? And why look at her with such a vicious, however brief, yearning? Perhaps he had heard of his consort. He had tired of his consort. Humans were notoriously, though predictably, inconsistent. After that one long burning glance, his gaze had shifted away, and she began to speak of her mission and the violence that had erupted in Mournhold. He sat still as a stone throughout her entire account. Puzzled at his inertia and vexed no end, Baranzia stared into the pale, set face, looking for some trace of the Septims she'd known in the past. She didn't know Uriel Septim well, having met him once when he was still a child, and then again at his coronation 20 years before. Twice, that was all. He'd been a stern and dignified presence at the ceremony, even as a young adult, yet not icily remote as this more mature man was. In fact, despite the physical resemblance, he didn't seem to be the same man at all. Not the same, yet something about him was familiar to her, more familiar than it should be. Some trick of posture or gesture. Suddenly she felt very hot, as if lava had been poured over her. Illusion. She had studied the arts of illusion well since Nightingale had deceived her so badly. She had learned how to detect it, and she felt it now, as certainly as a blind man could feel the sun on his face. Illusion, but why? Her mind worked furiously even as her mouth went on reciting details about Mournhold's troubles. Vanity? Humans were oft as ashamed at the signs of aging as elves were proud to exhibit them, yet the face of Uriel Septim wore seemed consistent with his age. Baranzia dared use none of her own magic. Even petty nobles had means of detecting magicka, if not actually shielding themselves from its effects within their own halls. The use of sorcery here would bring down the Emperor's wrath as surely as drawing a dagger would. Magic, illusion. Suddenly she was brought to mind of the Nightingale, and then he was sitting before her. Then the vision changed, and it was Uriel Septim. He looked sad, trapped, and then the vision faded once more, and another man sat in his place like the Nightingale, and yet unlike. Pale skin, bloodshot eyes, elven ears, and about him a fierce glow of concentrated malice, an aura of eldritch energy, a horrible destructive shimmer. The man was capable of anything. And then once again she was looking into the face of Uriel Septim. How could she be sure she wasn't imagining things? Perhaps her mind was playing tricks on her. She felt a sudden vast weariness, as if she'd been carrying a heavy burden for too long and too far. She decided to abandon her earnest narrative of Mournhold's ills, as it was quite plainly getting her nowhere, and switch back to pleasantry. Pleasantry, however, was a hidden agenda. Do you remember, sire, Symmachus and I had dinner with your family shortly after your father's coronation? You were no older than tiny Morgaya here. We were greatly honored to be the only guests that evening, except, of course, for your best friend Justin, of course. Ah, yes, the Emperor said, smiling cautiously, very cautiously. I do believe I recall that. You and Justin were such friends, your majesty. I was told he died not long after. A great pity. Indeed, I still do not like to speak of him. His eyes turned blank, or blanker, if that had been possible. "As for your request, milady, we shall take it under advisement and let you know." Baronzaya bowed, as did the children. A nod from the Emperor dismissed them, and they backed away from the Imperial presence. She took a deep breath when they emerged from the throne room. Justin had been an imaginary playmate, although young Uriel had insisted a place be set for Justin at every meal. Not only that, Justin, despite the boyish name, had been a girl. Symmachus had kept up the joke long after she had gone the way of imaginary childhood friends, inquiring after Justin's health whenever he and Uriel Septim met, and being responded to in that mock-serious fashion. The last Baronzaya had heard of Justin several years ago. The Emperor had evidently joked elaborately to Symmachus that she had met an adventurous young incorrigible Khajiit youth, married him, and settled down in Leandril to raise the fire ferns and mugworts. The man sitting on the Emperor's divan was not Uriel Septim. The Nightingale? Could it be? Yes. Yes! A chord of recognition ran through her, and Baronzaya knew that she was right. It was him. It was. The Nightingale, masquerading as the Emperor. Symmachus had been wrong. So wrong. What now, she wondered, frantically. What had become of Uriel Septim? And more to the point, what did it mean for her and Symmachus and all of Mournhold? Thinking back, Baronzaya guessed that their troubles were due to this false emperor, this Nightingale-spawned glamour, or whatever it really was. He must have taken Uriel Septim's place shortly after before the unreasonable demands on Mournhold had begun. That would explain why relations had deteriorated for so long, as humans reckon time, long after her disapproved liaison with Tiber Septim. The Nightingale knew of Symmachus's famed loyalty to and knowledge of the Septim House, and was effecting a preemptive strike. If that were the case, they were all in terrible danger. She and the children were in his power here in the Imperial City, and Symmachus was left alone to deal with the trouble of the Nightblades brewing in Mournhold. What must she do? Baronzaya impelled the children ahead of her, a hand on each shoulder, trying to stay cool, collected, her ladies-in-waiting and personal knights escort trailing behind. Finally, they reached their waiting carriage. Even though their suite of rooms was only a few blocks from the palace, a royal dignity forbade travel on foot for even short distances, and for once, Baronzaya was glad of it. The carriage seemed a new kind of refuge now, false as she knew the feeling must be. Just 1 second. A boy dashed up to one of the guards and handed him a scroll, and then pointed towards the carriage. The guard brought it to her. The boy waited, eyes wide and shining. The epistle was brief and complimentary, and simply inquired if King Edwir of Wayrest, of the province of High Rock, might be granted an audience with the famed Queen Baronzaya of Mournhold, as he had heard so much of her and would be pleased to make her acquaintance. Baronzaya's first impulse was to refuse. She wanted only to leave this city. Certainly she had no inclination towards any dalliance with a dazzled human. She looked up, frowning, and one of the guards said, "Milady, the boy says that his master awaits your reply yonder." She looked in the direction indicated and saw a handsome elderly man on horseback, surrounded by a half-dozen courtiers and cavaliers. He caught her eye and bowed respectfully, taking off a plumed hat. "Very well," Baronzaya said to the boy on impulse. "Tell your master that he may call on me tonight after the dinner hour." King Edwir looked polite and grave, and rather worried, and but not in the least love-struck. At least that was something, she thought pensively. Baronzaya stood at the tower window waiting. She could sense the familiar's nearness, but though the night sky was as clear as day to her eyes, she could not yet see him. Then suddenly he was there, a swift-moving dot beneath the wispy night clouds. A few more minutes, and the great nighthawk finished its descent, wings folding, talons reaching for her thick leather armband. She carried the bird to its perch, where it waited, panting, as her impatient fingers felt for the message secured in a capsule on one leg. The hawk drank mightily from the water till she had done, and then ruffled its feathers and preened, secure in her presence. A tiny part of her consciousness shared its satisfaction at a job well done, mission accomplished, and rest earned. Yet beneath it all was unease. Things were not right, even to its humble avian mind. Her fingers shook as she unfolded the thin parchment and pored over the cramped writing. Not Symmachus's bold hand. Baronzaya sat slowly, fingers smoothing the document, while she prepared her mind and body to accept disaster calmly, if disaster it would be. Disaster it was. The Imperial Guard had deserted Symmachus and joined the rebels. Symmachus was dead. The remaining loyal troops had suffered a decisive defeat. Symmachus was dead. The rebel leader had been recognized as the King of Mournhold by Imperial envoys. Symmachus was dead. Baranzaya and the children had been declared traitors to the Empire and a price set on their heads. Symmachus was dead. So the audience with the Empire earlier that morning had been nothing but a ruse, a charade. The Emperor must have already known. She was just being strung along, told to stay put, take things easy. Milady Queen, enjoy the Imperial City and the delights that it has to offer. Do make your stay as long as you want. Her stay, her detention, her captivity, and in all probability her impending arrest. She had no delusions about her situation. She knew the Emperor and his minions would never let her leave the Imperial City ever again, at least not alive. Symmachus was dead. Milady? Baranzaya jumped, startled at the servant's approach. What is it? The Breton is here, milady, King Edwir. The woman added helpfully, noting Baranzaya's incomprehension. She hesitated. Is there news, milady? She said, nodding towards the Nighthawk. Nothing that will not wait, Baranzaya said quickly, and her voice seemed to echo in the emptiness that suddenly yawned like a gaping abyss inside of her. See to the bird. She stood up, smoothed her gown, and prepared to attend to her royal visitor. She felt numb as a stone. Walls around her, numb as the quiescence of the night air, numb as a lifeless corpse. Symmachus was dead. King Edwir greeted her gravely and courteously, if a bit fulsomely. He claimed to be a fervent admirant of Symmachus, who figured prominently in his family's legends. Gradually, he turned the conversation to her business with the Emperor. He inquired after the details and asked if the outcome had been favorable to Mournhold. Finding her noncommittal, he suddenly blurted out, Lady Queen, you must believe me. The man who claims himself the Emperor is an impostor. I know it sounds mad, but No, Baranzaya said, with sudden decisiveness. You are entirely correct, my Lord King. I know. Edward relaxed into his seat for the first time, eyes suddenly shrewd. You know? You're not just humoring someone you think might be a madman? I assure you, my lord, I am not. She took a deep breath. And who do you surmise is dissembling as the Emperor? Imperial battle mage, Jagar Tharn. Ah, my Lord King, have you perchance heard of someone called the Nightingale? Yes, my lady. As a matter of fact, I have. My allies and I believe him to be one and the same man as the renegade Tharn. I knew it! Baranzaya stood up and tried to mask her up evil. The Nightingale, Jagar Tharn. Oh, but the man was a demon, diabolical and insidious, and so very clever. He'd contrived their downfall seamlessly, perfectly. Symmachus, my Symmachus. Edwir coughed indifferently. Milady, we need your aid. Baranzaya smiled grimly at the irony. I do believe I should be the one saying those words, but go on, please. Of what assistance might I be, my Lord King? Quickly the monarch outlined a plot. The mage Rhea Silmain, of late apprentice to the vile Jagar Tharn, had been killed and declared a traitor by the false emperor. Yet she had retained a bit of her powers and could still contact a few of those that she had known well on the mortal plane. She had chosen a champion who would undertake to find the Staff of Chaos, which had been hidden by the traitorous sorcerer in an unknown site. This champion was to wield the staff's power to destroy Jagar Tharn, who was otherwise invulnerable, and rescue the true emperor being held prisoner in some other dimension. However, the champion, while thankfully still alive, now languished in the Imperial dungeons. Tharn's attention must be diverted while the Chosen One gained freedom with Rhea's spirit's help. Baranzaya had false emperor's ears and seemingly his eyes. Would she provide the necessary distraction? I suppose I could obtain another audience with him, Baranzaya said carefully. But would that be sufficient? I must tell you that my children and I have just recently been declared traitors to the Empire. In Mournhold, perhaps, milady, in Morrowind, things are different in the Imperial City and the Imperial Province. The same administrative morass that makes it near impossible to obtain an audience with the Emperor and his ministers also quite assures that you would never be unlawfully imprisoned or otherwise punished without the benefit of due legal process. In your case, milady, and your children's, the situation is further exacerbated by your royal rank. As queen and heirs apparent, your persons are considered inviolate, sacrosanct, in fact. The king grinned. The imperial bureaucracy, milady, is a double-edged claymore. So, at least she and the children were safe for the time being, and the thought struck her. My lord king, what did you mean earlier when you said that I had the false emperor's eyes, and seemingly at that? Edwin looked uncomfortable. It was whispered that among your servants that Jagar Tharn kept your likeness in a sort of shrine in his chambers. I see. Her thoughts wandered momentarily to that insane romance of hers with the Nightingale. She had been madly in love with him, foolish woman, and the man she had once loved had caused to be killed the man that she truly loved. He's gone now. She still couldn't bring herself to accept the fact that Symmachus was dead. But even if he is, she told herself firmly, my love is alive and remains. He would always be with her, as would the pain of living the rest of her life without him, the pain of trying to survive each day, each night without his presence, his comfort, his love, the pain of knowing that he would never see his children grow into a fine pair of adults, who would never know their father, how brave he was, how strong, how wonderful, how loving, especially little Morgaya. And for that, for all of that, for all that you have done to my family, Nightingale, you must die. Does that surprise you? Edward's words broke into her thoughts. What? Does what surprise me? Your likeness in Tharn's room. Oh! Her features said it imperturbably. Yes and no. Edward could see from her expression that she wished to change the subject. He turned once again to their plans. Our chosen one may need a few days to escape, milady. Can you gain him a bit more time? You trust me in this, my lord king. Why? We're desperate, milady. We have no choice. But even if we did, why yes. Yes, I would trust you. I do trust you. Your husband has been good to my family over the years. The Lord Symmachus is dead. What? Baronziah related the recent events quickly and coolly. Milady, queen, but how dreadful. I'm so sorry. For the first time, Baronziah's glacial poise was shaken. In the face of sympathy, she felt her outward calm start to crumble. She gathered her composure and willed herself to stillness. Under the circumstances, milady, we can hardly ask. Nay, good my lord. Under the circumstances, I must do what I may to avenge myself upon the murderer of my children's father. A single tear escaped the fortress of her eyes. She brushed it away impatiently. In return, I ask only that you protect my orphan children as you may. Edward drew himself up. His eyes shone. Willingly do I so pledge, most brave and noble queen. The gods of our beloved land, indeed Tamriel itself, be my witness. His words touched her absurdly, yet profoundly. I thank you from my heart and soul, good my lord King Edwir. You have mine and my children's everlasting She broke down. She did not sleep that night, but sat in a chair beside her bed, hands folded in her lap, thinking deep and long into the waxing and waning of the darkness. She would not tell the children, not yet, not until she must. She had no need to seek another audience with the Emperor. A summons arrived at first light. She told the children she expected to be gone a few days, bade them give the servants no trouble, and kissed them goodbye. Morgaya whimpered a bit. She was bored and lonely in the imperial city. Helseth looked dour, but said nothing. He was very much like his father. His father. At the imperial palace, Baronziah was escorted not into the great audience hall, but into a small parlor where the emperor sat at a solitary breakfast. He nodded a greeting and waved his hand toward the window. Magnificent view, isn't it? Baronziah stared out over the towers of the great city. It dawned on her that this was the very chamber where she'd first met Tiber Septim all those years ago. Centuries ago. Tiber Septim. Another man that she had loved. Who else had she loved? Symmachus, Tiber Septim, and Straw. She remembered the big blonde stable boy with sudden and intense affection. She never realized till now, but she had loved Straw. Only she had never let him know. She had been so young then. Those had been carefree days, halcyon days, before all this. Before him. Not Symmachus, the nightingale. She was shocked in spite of herself. The mad could still affect her. Even now. Even after all that had happened. A strong wave of inchoate emotion swept over her. When she turned back at last, Uriel Septim had vanished, and the nightingale sat in his place. You knew, he said quietly, scanning her face. You knew instantly. I wanted to surprise you. You might at least have pretended. Baronziah spread her arms, trying to pacify the maelstrom churning deep inside her. I'm afraid my skill at pretense is no match for yours, my liege. He sighed. You're angry. Just a little, I must admit, she said icily. I don't know about you, but I find betrayal a trifle offensive. How human of you. She took a deep breath. What do you want of me? Now you're pretending. He stood up to face her directly. You know what I want of you. You want to torment me. Go ahead, I'm in your power, but leave my children alone. No. I don't want that at all, Baronziah. He came near, speaking low in his old caressing voice that had sent shivers cascading through her body. The same voice that was doing the same thing to her here and now. Don't you see? This was the only way. His hands closed on her arms. She felt her resolve fading, her disgust at him weakening. You could have taken me with you. Unbidden tears gathered in her eyes. Shika said, I didn't have the power. But now I have it all. Mine to have, mine to share, mine to give to you. He once more waved his hands toward the window and the city beyond. All Tamriel is mine to lay at your feet, and that is only the beginning. It's too late, you left me to him. He's dead. The peasant's dead, a scant few years. What do they matter? The children can be adopted by me, and we'll have others together, Baronzaya. Oh, and what children they'll be. What things we shall pass on to them. Your beauty and my magic. I have powers you haven't even dreamt of, not in your most untamed imaginings. He moved to kiss her. She slipped his grasp and turned away. I don't believe you. You do, you know. You're still angry, that's all. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Tell me what you want, Baronzaya. Baronzaya, my beloved. Tell me, it shall be yours. Her whole life flashed in front of her, the past, the present, and the future still to come. Different times, different lives, different Baronzayas. Which one was the real one? Which one was the real Baronzaya? For by that choice she would determine the shape of her fate. She made it. She knew. She knew who the real Baronzaya was, and what she wanted. A walk in the garden, my liege, she said. A song or two, perhaps. The nightingale laughed. You want to be courted. And why not? You do it so well. It's been long. Besides, I've had the pleasure. He smiled. As you wish, my lady, Queen Baronzaya. Your wish is my command. He took her hand and kissed it. Now and forever. And so they spent their days in courtship, walking, talking, singing, and laughing together, while the Empire's business was left to subordinates. I'd like to see the staff, Baronzaya said, idly one day. I only had a glimpse of it, you'll recall. He frowned. Nothing would give me greater pleasure, Heart's Delight, but that would be impossible. You don't trust me, Baronzaya pouted, but softened her lips when he leaned over for a kiss. Nonsense, love, of course I do. But it isn't here, he chuckled. In fact, it isn't anywhere. He kissed her again, more passionately this time. You're talking in riddles again. I want to see it. You couldn't have destroyed it. Ah, you've gained in wisdom since we last met. You inspired my hunger for knowledge somewhat. She stood up. The Staff of Chaos can't be destroyed, and it can't be removed from Tamriel, not without the direst consequences to the land itself. Ah, you impress me, my love. All true. It is not destroyed, and it is not removed from Tamriel. And yet, as I said, it isn't anywhere. Can you solve the puzzle? He pulled her to him, and she leaned into his embrace. Here's a greater riddle still, he whispered. How does one make one of two? That I can and will show you. Their bodies merged, limbs tangled together. Later, when they had drawn a bit apart and he lay dozing, she thought sleepily, 1 of 2, 2 of 1, 3 of 2, 2 of 3. What cannot be destroyed or banished might be split apart, perhaps. She stood up, eyes blazing. She started to smile. The nightingale kept a journal. He scribbled entries onto it every night after quick reports from underlings. It was locked in a bureau, but the lock was a simple one. She had, after all, been a member of the Thieves' Guild in a past life, in another life. Another Baronzaya. One morning, Baronzaya managed to sneak a quick look at it while he was occupied at his toilet. She discovered that the first piece of the Staff of Chaos was hidden in the ancient dwarvish mine called Fang Lair, although its location was given only in the vaguest of terms. The diary was crammed with jotted events in an odd shorthand, which is very hard to decipher. All Tamriel, she thought, in his hands and mine, and more perhaps, and yet, for all his exterior charm, there was a cold emptiness where his heart should have been, a vacuum of which he was quite unaware, she thought. One could glimpse it now and then, when his eyes would go blank and hard, and yet, though he had a different concept of it, he yearned for happiness too, and contentment. Peasant dreams, Baronzaya thought, and straw flashed before her eyes again, looking lost and sad. And then Theris, with a feline Khajiit smile. Tiber Septim, powerful and lonely. Symmachus, solid, stolid Symmachus, who did what ought to be done, quietly and efficiently. The nightingale, a riddle and a certainty, both the darkness and the light. The nightingale, who would rule all and more, and spread chaos in the name of order. Baronzaya got reluctant leave from him to visit her children, who had yet to be told of their father's death and of the Emperor's offer for protection. She finally did, and it wasn't easy. Morgaya clung to her for what seemed like an era, sobbing wretchedly, while Helseth ran off into the garden to be alone, afterward refusing all attempts to speak to her. All her attempts to speak to him on the subject of his father, or even to let her hold him to her breast. Edward called on her while she was there. She told him that she had discovered what she had discovered so far, explaining that she must remain a while yet and learn more as she could. The Nightingale teased her about her elderly admirer. He was quite aware of Edward's suspicion, but he wasn't in the least bit perturbed, for no one took the old fool seriously. Bairnsaya even managed to arrange a reconciliation of sorts between them. Edward publicly recanted his misgivings, and his old friend the Emperor forgave him. He was afterward invited to dine with them at least once a week. The children liked Edward and Helseth, even Helseth, who disapproved of his mother's liaison with the Emperor and consequently detested him. He'd become surly and temperamental, and as the days passed, and frequently quarreled with both his mother and her lover. Edward was not happy with the affair either, and the Nightingale took great delight at times openly displaying his affection for Bairnsaya just to nettle the old man. They could not marry, of course, for Uriel Septim was already married, at least not yet. The Nightingale had exiled the Empress shortly after taking the Emperor's place, but had not dared to harm her. She was given sanctuary by the Temple of the One. It had been given out that she was suffering from ill health, and rumors had been circulated by the Nightingale's agents that she had mental problems. The Emperor's children had likewise been dispatched to various prisons all across Tamriel, disguised as schools. "She'll grow worse in time," Nightingale said, carelessly, referring to the Empress and eyeing Bairnsaya's swollen breasts and swelling belly with satisfaction. "As for their children, well, life is full of hazards, isn't it? We'll be married. Your child will be my true heir." He did want the child. Bairnsaya was sure of that. She was far less sure, however, of his feelings for her. They argued continually, now often violently, usually about Helseth, whom he wanted to send away to school in Somerset Isle, the province furthest from the imperial city. Bairnsaya made no effort to avoid these altercations. The Nightingale, after all, had no interest in a smooth, unruffled life, and besides, he thoroughly enjoyed making up afterward. Occasionally Bairnsaya would take the children and retreat to their old apartment, declaring she wanted no more to do with him. But he would always come to fetch her back, and she would always let herself be fetched back. It was ineffable, like the rising and setting of Tamriel's twin moons. She was 6 months pregnant before she deciphered the location of this last staff piece, an easy one, since every dark elf knew where the Mount of Dagoth-Ur was. When she next quarreled with the Nightingale, she simply left the city with Edward and rode hard for High Rock and Wayrest. The Nightingale was furious, but there was little he could do. His assassins were rather inept, and he dared not leave his seat of power to pursue them in person. Nor could he openly declare war on Wayrest. He had no legitimate claim on her or her unborn child. True to form, the imperial city's nobility had disapproved of his liaison with Bairnsaya, and they had so many years ago of Tiber Septims, and were glad to see her go. Wayrest was equally distrustful of her, but Edward was fanatically loved by his prosperous little city-state, and allowances were readily made for his eccentricities. Bairnsaya and Edward were married within a year, and after the birth of her son by the Nightingale. In spite of this unfortunate fact, Edward doted on her and her children. She in her turn did not love him, but she was fond of him, and that was something. It was nice to have someone, and Wayrest was a very good place for children to grow up, while they waited and bided their time, and prayed for the champion's success in his mission. Bairnsaya could only hope that he wouldn't take very long, whoever this unnamed champion was. She was a dark elf, and she had all the time in the world. All the time. But no more love left to give, and no more hatred left to burn. She had nothing left. Nothing but pain and memories, and her children. She only wanted to raise her family and provide them a good life, and to be left to live out what remained of hers. She had no doubt it was going to be a long life yet, and during it she wanted peace and quiet and serenity, of her soul as well as of her heart. Peasant dreams, that was what she wanted. And that was what the real Bairnsaya wanted, and that was what the real Bairnsaya was. Peasant dreams. Pleasant dreams.
So we'll just take a quick look to see if we've read any of these others. Alright, Deathblow of Abernet is definitely a new one. Found a copy of Grasping Fortune. There was a book about the origins of the orcs, which apparently I forgot to pick up. I'll pick it up on my way back. Lives of the Saints.
Lives of the Saints. If you would be wise, model your lives on the lives of the saints. If you would learn valor, follow Saint Nerevar, the captain, patron of warriors, and statesman. Lord Nerevar helped unite the barbarian Dunmer tribes into a great nation, culminating in his martyrdom when leading the Dunmer to victory against the evil Dwemer and the traitorous House Dagoth in the Battle of Red Mountain. If you would learn daring, follow Saint Veloth, the pilgrim, patron of outcasts and spiritual seekers. Saint Veloth, prophet and mystic, led the Dunmer out of the decadent home country of the Somerset Isles and into the promised land of Morrowind. Saint Veloth also taught the difference between the good and bad Daedra, and won the aid of the good Daedra for his people while teaching how to carefully negotiate with the bad Daedra. If you would learn generosity, follow Saint Rilms the Barefooted, patron of pilgrims and beggars. Saint Rilms gave away her shoes and then dressed and appeared as a beggar to better acquaint herself with the poor. If you would learn self-respect and respect for others, follow Saint Aralor the Penitent, patron of tanners and miners. This foul criminal repented his sins and traveled a circuit of great pilgrimage on his knees. If you would learn mercy and its fruits, follow Saint Saren the Merciful, patron of brewers, bakers, distillers. This pure virgin of modest aspect could heal all diseases at the price of taking the disease upon herself. Tough-minded and fearless, she took on the burdens of others and bore those burdens to an honored old age. If you would learn fierce justice, follow Saint Felms the Bold, patron of butchers and fishmongers. This brave warlord slew the Nord invaders and drove them from our lands. He could neither read nor write, receiving inspiration directly from the lips of Elmsevi. If you would learn pride of race and tribe, follow Saint Rorus the Martyr, patron of furnishers and caravaneers. Captured by Argonians just before the Arnesian War, Rorus proudly refused to renounce the tribunal faith and withstood the cruel tortures of Argonian sorcerers. Vengeance and justice for the martyred Saint Rorus was the rallying cry of the Arnesian War. If you would learn the rule of law and justice, follow Saint Olms the Just, patron of chandlers and clerks. Founder of the Ordinators, Saint Olms conceived and articulated the fundamental principles of testing, ordeal, and repentance. If you would learn benevolence, follow Saint Delan the Wise, patron of potters and glassmakers. Saint Delan was head of House Indoril, a skilled lawyer and author of many learned treatises on tribunal law and custom. If you would learn the love of peace, follow Saint Maris the Peacemaker, patron of farmers and laborers. As a little girl, Saint Maris showed healing gifts and trained as a healer. She ended a long and bloody house war, intervening on the battlefield in her white robe to heal warriors and spellcrafters without regard to faction. The troops of all house adopted white robes as her standard and refused to shed the blood of their brethren. If you would learn reverence, follow Saint Lothus the Pious, patron of tailors and dyers, contemporary and companion of the tribunals, and the best-loved Alma Rula of the tribunal temple. He formulated the central rituals and principles of the new temple faith. Saint Lothus is the symbolic mortal bridge between the gods and the faithful and the archetypal priest.
Alright, I don't exactly have a lot of, I don't have a lot of inventory space, but we'll at least be able to work with what we've got. Oh, there's one other thing I wanted to check. So I'll see if I'll be able to get the Salt Strider directly to where I need to go.
Yes, Outlander. What do you want?
But while I'm at it, I will get a little bit of commerce done.
I don't know where to begin. It is such an honor to meet you.
Just trying to think if I should try buying any of these items, but I don't think it's worth it. I am, however, going to see. Alright. There might be a way to make this work. Well, here's what I can do. I am dying to know exactly how she got that. Or if that's something I sold her to her, because at that point I want to know exactly what I got in return. Alright, so in this case I'm going to try and get rid of any extras. Alright, now let's think about some scrolls. So, the idea here is I'm gonna buy back some of these. And then over time I'll be able to sell those back to her.
Clearly he was
I
wrong.
see you have great
I do think he
understanding.
meant well.
Welcome.
I'm curious if I can get away with selling, no.
Welcome, friend. The day is yours. What shall we talk about?
Our sugar is yours, friend.
Oh, greetings. How do you do? Maybe talk?
I'm very happy.
Hello, guys. I'm Meldor, and this is Balmora. I don't believe we met. Is there anything I can do for you?
I'm gonna guess you're not gonna buy any of the things that I want to sell you.
Hello, guys. I'm Clagius Clandler, and this is Balmora. I don't believe we've met. Is there something I can do for you?
Alright, again, selling potions where I can. Now this is gonna be the tricky part where I try, or hang on. Nice.
Greetings, citizen. I'm Trelasa Nithraun. Welcome to Balmora. We're a House Halalu town and loyal citizens of the Empire. What can I do for you?
Alright, again, I want to take a quick minute to see if there's any, I don't really feel I need restore personality at this point. Or at least not this much. Still not a lot as far as weight is concerned, but we're getting a little bit better.
Revere knows why you are here. You want to buy Revere's famous Daedric weapons.
There's a lot of restore fatigue I've got. Alright, actually I'm gonna make this a little easy on myself. So I'm gonna make a guess that I can't get where I think I want. Sorry, I can't get where I want to from the Silt Strider, but let's take a look.
I don't believe I've seen a dark elf in such a grand outfit in some time. How can I help you?
I think fast travel works for me.
I'm very happy to make your acquaintance.
First the vision, then the what was I thinking?
I'm Maiseline Marion, the Breton Guild Guide. I provide instantaneous transport between the various mages' guild halls on Vardenfell.
Vivek, please.
Welcome to Vivek, Caius. I am Cretalia Julian. Are you looking for services in the Sacred City? Maybe I can help.
Daedra Heart is welcome. So what I'm trying to do here is sell the heaviest restore fatigue.
Welcome, friend. The day is
Welcome,
yours.
friend.
Nailed it. We just missed our first opportunity to
great understanding. Well,
Do I know you? We're thinking you might want to go fishing.
It's exactly where I want to go.
Yes,
I
What?
can always rely on it to be raining. Alright, so we'll just take a quick second to see if the door is open. I suspect it is not. And if it isn't, we'll take a minute to go and investigate the tomb where I left some stuff. Well, at least it stopped raining. Alright, it's 4 p.m., so I want to be reasonably quick about this, but I don't see it being too time-consuming. And of course we get to admire the scenery now that it's sunny out. Back. I should have made it a quick in and out, not well, it's good for it's definitely good for money. Not good for time though. Yeah, I gotta get out of here soon. We will take that with us for reading as we head for dusk. Alright.
The true nature of orcs. Orcs were born during the latter days of the Dawn Era. History has mislabeled them as beast folk related to the goblin races, but the orcs are actually the children of Trinimac, strongest of the Altmeri ancestor spirits. When Trinimac was eaten by the Daedroth prince Boethia and transformed into that fell god's insides, the orcs were transformed as well. The ancient name for orcs is Orsimer, which means the pariah folk. They now follow Meluk, the remains of Trinimac. Who is Maluk? He is more commonly known as the Daedroth Prince Malekith, whose sphere is the patronage of the spurned and ostracized, the sworn oath and the bloody curse. He is not technically a Daedra lord, nor do the other Daedra recognize him as such, but this is fitting for his sphere. Of old, he was Trinimac, the champion of the High Elven pantheon, in some places more popular than Orael, who protected them against enemies without and within. When Trinimac and his followers attempted to halt the Velothi dissident movement, Boethia ate him. Trinimac's body and spirit were corrupted, and he emerged as Malakath. His followers were likewise changed for the worse. Despised by everyone, especially the inviolate Orael, they quickly fled to the northern wastes near Sarthal. They fought Nords and Chimer for a place in the world, but did not get much. In Skyrim, Malakath is called Orke, or Old Knocker, and his battles with Ysmir are legendary.
Alright, so if I do... Well, that doesn't help me. Perfect. Also, this is a very nice view.
Welcome, Caius. Mira Milo has told us of your coming. You can find her in the library with Master Barleo. Mira Milo has run terrible risks remaining in the Hall of Wisdom and Truth, and we are grateful that you have rescued her from the Ministry of Truth. Master Gilvis Barleo is the abbot of our monastery. He is the head of our secret order.
And what is the secret order?
We adopted the name Dissident Priests. We are not ashamed of our disputes with the temple's hierarchy.
Tell me more.
We are fiercely loyal to the temple's ancient traditions, but we are troubled that the ultimate source of the tribunal's divinity might be the same as the source of Dagoth-Ur's evil power. Dagoth-Ur's power seems to wax as the tribunal's power wanes. Read the Progress of Truth and other documents in the Apocrypha in our library, and you will see why we are uneasy.
What do you know of the Nerevarine?
The Ashlanders have a prophecy that one day
We've heard this before, thanks.
Welcome, Caius. Mara Melo told us of your coming. You can find her with Master Barleo.
May I help you?
Thought I might be able to get some buying and selling done, but no luck.
Thank you, Caius, for rescuing me. Now I'll stay here at Holamayan with Master Barello and assist him with the monastery's library.
Tell me more about this man.
Master Garvis Barello is abbot of our monastery, head of our secret order.
Tell me about the temple.
The Tribunal Temple is the native religion of civilized Morrowind. They worship three god kings, Almexia, Sothasil, and Vivek, who are known together as the Tribunal. Usually we just call it the Temple.
Is there something you need?
How can I help you?
I thought you could tell me.
Maramilo has run terrible risks remaining at the Hall of Wisdom and Truth. We are grateful that you've rescued her from the Ministry of Truth.
All right.
You flatter me with your attention, Outlander.
Tell me about the lost prophecies, damn it.
The Ashlanders have a mystical tradition of interpreting dreams and visions as prophecies. These prophecies are recorded in verse and may be lost or garbled over the generations, but the dissident priests have collected many ancient prophecies of the Nerevarine, many of which they believe to be genuine. Collectively, these are called the lost prophecies of the Incarnate. One of the sacred missions of the dissident priests is the collection and study of these prophecies.
All right. Tell me about the persecution of the Nerevarine.
It's an Ashlander cult, a primitive superstition, says the temple. Nerevarines say that the tribunal are false gods. I've never understood why the temple wastes so much energy on them. The faithful cannot be shaken by such attacks, and the Ashlanders are just ignorant savages. But since the submission of the temple to the Empire and the erosion of faith among Dunmer, the militant wing of the temple is increasingly fierce in its attacks on heretics and heathens.
All right, tell me about the dissident priests.
A significant part of the temple hierarchy might be more inclined to accept and tolerate differences of opinion and dogma, but other parts of the temple, in particular the ordinators under Beryl Sala, claim that the threat from the Red Mountain and Dagoth-Ur can only be resisted with a unified, resolute faith. The people are afraid, so they support the hard line, but if we can show ourselves to confront Dagoth-Ur more effectively than the ordinators, the temple and the people will support us.
Tell me more.
So long as the Ordinators, buoyant armigers in the Tribunal, could contain the Blight and Dagoth-Ur's creatures within the Ghost Fence, faith in the Temple's protective power was strong, but now travelers and settlements suffer from blight storms and marauding monsters, and the people fear the Temple is losing its ages-old battle with the devil Dagoth-Ur.
Tell me more about the Nerevarine.
Our interest in the Nerevarine used to be a matter of principle, a willingness to consider the validity of mystical insights rejected by Temple doctrine. Now Dagoth-Ur grows stronger while the Tribunal grows weaker, and the return of Saint Nerevar, even if only reborn in spirit, may be our best prospect of salvation.
Well, then tell me more about Nerevar.
By the way, here are a few books from our library that you might find of interest. Each gives a very different impression of Nerevar.
Well, then how about the lost prophecies?
I reviewed the Apocrypha. I have found 2 passages of particular interest. We've made copies of these passages to give to you. Many are familiar with the 2 Nerevarine prophecies among the Ashlanders called the Stranger and the Seven Vision. We have 2 other prophecies, the Lost Prophecy and the 7 Curses, that may offer additional insights into the riddles surrounding the coming of the Incarnate. Perhaps these are the Lost Prophecies that your friend Nibani Masaya told you about. We've also prepared a document called Kangrenak's Tools. This document will explain to you and to others the terrible secret that the Temple conceals about the true history of the Tribunal and the corrupt nature of their divine powers. It is to conceal this secret that the Temple persecutes the Nerevarine and the dissident priests. This persecution must stop. We must be united against the true enemy Dagoth-Ur. And if you are the Nerevarine, you might lead us against him.
So before I go any further, I'm going to take a minute here just to write the books I've just been given down, because I'm not going to be able to get through them all tonight. Alright, so let's start by talking about the Apocrypha.
The Hieroglypha and the collected priestly writings of the Temple. Only the Apocrypha are the hidden writing, secrets known only to the highest levels of priesthood and Inquisition. To find the Temple, we have gathered as much of the Apocrypha as we can here in Holamayan. One of the chief disputes between the Temple and the dissident priests is that the Temple hides the truth from its followers.
me more about the lost prophecy.
From seventh sign to seventh, from seventh sign of 11th generation, neither hound nor guar, no seed, nor harrow, but dragonborn and far star marked. Outlander incarnate beneath Red Mountain, blessed guest counters 7 curses. Star-blessed hand wields thrice cursed blade to reap the harvest of the unmourned house. I've annotated your copy of the Lost Prophecy with our best efforts at interpretation, but a rough summary might be: an outlander, foreign-born and welcomed as a guest, confronts 7 curses beneath Red Mountain. His hand, blessed by Azura, uses a cursed blade to bring justice to House Dagoth, or House Dwemer, or both. Nerevarine, an outlander? That wouldn't please many Ashlanders, and may explain how the prophecy got lost.
What about the 7 curses?
The 7 curses reads as follows. Through the doors of the unmourned house, where scoffers scoff and schemers scheme, from the halls of the oath-breaking house ring 7 curses of gods blasphemed. First curse, curse of fire. Second curse, curse of ash. Third curse, curse of flesh. Fourth curse, curse of ghosts. Fifth curse, curse of seed. Sixth curse, curse of despair. Seventh curse, curse of dreams. Your copy of the 7 curses bears our guesses at interpreting the verses. In short form, 7 curses come from House Dagoth, or House Dwemer, or both. Fire and ash come from Red Mountain. Flesh is the corpus. Ghost, seed, and despair are unclear, but curse of dreams seem to refer to recent cases of soul sickness and sleeper attacks on the towns.
Let's talk about Dagoth.
So long as the ordinators, buoyant armatures, and tribunal... Oh,
we've already talked about that. Gotcha. Let's talk about the 6th house.
This is a new threat, and not yet widely recognized as another face of the devil Dagoth, but it is clearly a sign of a coming crisis, and the temple may no longer be able to protect Morrowind. In such troubled times, the Dunmer may turn to ancient pillars of faith, the ancestors of the Daedra, and especially to the prophetic visions granted by Lord Azura. Then they may look to the Nerevarine, Saint Nerevar reborn, to lead them against the grim armies of Dagoth.
How do I get back to Vivek?
Viverana Aaron, a monk at the docks outside, can arrange for travel back to Vivek. You can only enter or leave Holamayan at dusk and dawn, and the entrance is sealed at all other hours. But please, make yourself comfortable here. Rest in our beds and make good use of our services. You may read our books, but don't take them. Do not abuse our hospitality. Do not take personal items or alchemical apparatus or ingredients or other private property.
Understood. I would love to read all of these, but, oh, now I've got...
May the wind be on your back.
Neat.
Is there something you need?
I'd love to return to Vivek.
You'll return to Vivek by boat, arriving at the West Docks in Ebonheart. Are you ready?
I am.
And I'm ready to take you to Ebonheart whenever you're ready to travel.
I'm gonna get back to Vivek and then we'll talk about what the next steps are.
Is there something I can do for you?
Vivek, Caius, I'm sure you have some questions. What would you like to know?
No, I think I'll just try and sell some of my goods, thanks.
Outlander, I've heard much about you.
What services do you have? And after my own arm.
We're watching you. Yes, Outlander. What do you want?
Should be able to get at least a little something for what I've got here.
Submit to the three, the spirits and thy lords.
This is the sacred city of Vivek. Count your blessings. Can I help you find someone in particular, or are you just looking around?
There's not a lot that we can sell.
Welcome, friend. Are you the one I've heard talk about?
Yes, Outlander. What do you want?
May I help you?
Probably
If
could
you're
have some.
here for trouble, you'll get more than you bargained for.
Yeah, I should have sold the bone mold here.
is truly a pleasure to see
Special
you.
prices just for you today.
And I'm looking to try and sell any heavy restore fatigue. Alright, now it's very late at the time I'm recording it, so I think it'll have to be a shorter one tonight, but let's read at least one more work. That will be the real Nerevar, after finding out about the real Baron Zaya.
The real Nerevar. This Telvanni Retainer's informal history of Nerevar lists no sources. When the Dunmer followed Veloth to Morrowind, there were many warring clans with no law or leader in common. One Dunmer warlord, Nerevar, had the ambition to rule all the Dunmer. In that time, House Dwemer were great enchanters, so Nerevar went in secret to a Dwemer smith and asked for an enchanted ring that would help him. The ring gave its wearer great powers of persuasion. For safety, it was enchanted to instantly kill anyone who wore it except Nerevar. The ring was called Moon and Star, and it helped Nerevar unite the various clans into the First Council. Later, however, disputes over religion divided the council, with House Dwemer and House Dagoth on one side, and all other houses on the other. Dwemer and Dagoth invited Orc and Nord clans as allies, and held northwest Morrowind, while Nerevar mustered the other houses and Nobad tribes and marched to meet the Dwemer-Dagoth Westerner forces. The armies met at Red Mountain, a Dwemer stronghold. The Dwemer were defeated with great slaughter, and terrible sorceries were used, resulting in the utter extermination of House Dwemer, House Dagoth, and their allies. Nerevar was killed in the battle and his ring lost, but Nerevar's alliance survives in Morrowind's ruling political institution, the Grand Council.
So that was fairly brief. We can do that. We can do a second one.
Nerevar, Moon and Star. This is a selection from a series of monographs by various imperial scholars on Ashlander legends. In ancient days, the Deep Elves and a great host of Outlanders from the west came to steal the land of the Dunmer. In that time, Nerevar was the great Khan and war leader of the House people, but he honored the ancient spirits and the tribal law and became as one of us. So when Nerevar pledged upon his great ring of the ancestors, one clan under Moon and Star, to honor the ways of the spirits and rights of the land, all the tribes joined the House people to fight a great battle at Red Mountain. Though many Dunmer tribesmen and housemen died at Red Mountain, the Dwemer were defeated and their evil magics destroyed, and the Outlanders driven from the land. But after this great victory, the power-hungry Khans of the great houses slew Nerevar in secret, and, setting themselves up as gods, neglected Nerevar's promises to the tribes. But it is said that Nerevar will come again with his ring and cast down the false gods, and by the power of his ring will make good his promise to the tribes and honor the spirits and drive the outsiders from this land.
Everyone wants to claim Nerevar for themselves. Finally, Saint Nerevar.
Saint Nerevar, from a short temple pamphlet for Western readers. Ages ago, Nerevar was the greatest Dunmer general, first counselor and companion of Vivek, Almalexia, and Sothasil, who, with the power of the great ring of the ancestors, one clan under Moon and Star, united the Dunmer houses to confront the evil Dwemer, the treacherous House Dagoth, and their western allies at Red Mountain. By providence, the faithless Dwemer were utterly destroyed and their allies defeated, but Nerevar, mortally wounded in combat with the traitor Dagoth was driven from Red Mountain. Nerevar died not long after of his wounds, but he lived to see the birth of the temple and to bless the unity of the Dunmer and into the safekeeping of Almsivi, the temple, and its communion of saints.
Alright, so the Lost Prophecy was the next one.
The Lost Prophecy, from the Apocrypha of the Dissident Priests, annotated by Gilvis Barlow, abbot of Holamayan. From 7th sign of 11th generation, neither hound nor guar, no seed nor harrow, but dragonborn and far star marked, outlander incarnate beneath Red Mountain, blessed guest counters 7 curses. Star-blessed hand wields thrice cursed blade to reap the harvest of the unmourned house. Notes, lines 1 through 3, of ancient family, but not of the 4 great Ashlander clans, born under foreign stars and a sign of the dragon, the imperial sign. Line 4 through 5, Outlander Incarnate appears as a formal epithet, stressing the linkage between the words. The Outlander Incarnate is a blessed guest, one not born of the tribes but accepted as a guest with the rights of hearth and hospitality. Under Red Mountain, he will confront and balance against 7 curses. See the 7 curses prophecy also. Dagoth-Ur is served by his 7 kin, once great wizard lords called Ash Vampires by the Ashlanders. Lines 6 through 7, Starblessed suggests Azura, the Daedra lord and patron of magic, fate, and prophecy. Thrice cursed blade may refer to a weapon called Keening, associated with certain legends with the Battle of Red Mountain and Dwevern craft lord Kagnarak. Reap the harvest is a reference to the proverb, you harvest from the seeds you plant, which means that you get what your labors deserve, in both a positive sense of reward and negative sense of punishment. The unmourned house could be either or both the lost great house of the Dunmer, House Dwemer, and House Dagoth.
Alright, these are pretty short, so we can get through all of them.
7 curses from the Apocrypha of the Dissident Priests, annotated by Gilvis Barlow, abbot of Holamayan. Through the doors of the unarmored house, where scoffers scoff and schemers scheme, from the halls of the oath-breaking house rings 7 curses of gods blasphemed. First curse, curse of fire. Second curse, curse of ash. Third curse, curse of flesh. Fourth curse, curse of ghosts. Fifth curse, curse of seed. Sixth curse, curse of despair. Seventh curse, curse of dreams. Notes, lines 1 through 3, ambiguous, may refer to the impiety of the god-mocking House Dwemer or the treacherous diplomacy of the subtle House Dagoth, or both. House Dagoth, however, was reviled as oath-breakers for their treachery at Red Mountain. It may, however, refer to unspecified broken oaths of peace between Lord Nerevar and Lord Dumak, founders of the Grand Council. Nerevar and Dumak were loyal friends until the disagreements between the Dwemer and the other great houses broke out into open conflict. Line 4, the Dwemer were mockers and profaners of the divine. Lines 5 through 6, the curses of fire and ash would come from Red Mountain, where Dagoth-Ur rules. These were the earliest reported threats from Red Mountain. Line 7, curse of flesh suggests blight diseases, especially Corpus. Fire and ash storms preceded the threats of blight and Corpus. Lines 8 through 10, obscure, may refer to as of yet unrecognized threats from Dagoth-Ur. Line 11, recent reports of soul sickness and disturbed dreams come from townfolk and Ashlanders alike. That the 7th and final curse has begun suggests that the threat presented is about to reach a crisis. Kagranak's tools, summarized from the Apocrypha by Gilvis Barlow, abbot of Holamayan, and various of the dissident priests. Beneath Red Mountain, Dwemen miners discovered a great magical stone. By diverse methods, Lord Kagranak, high priest and magecrafter of the ancient Dwemer, determined that this magical stone was the heart of the god Lokran, cast here in the Dawn era as a punishment for his mischief in creating the mortal world. Determined to use its divine powers to create a new god for the exclusive benefit of the Dwemer, Kagranak forged 3 great enchanted artifacts, which are called Kagranak's tools. Wraithguard is an enchanted gauntlet to protect its wearer from destruction when tapping the heart's power. Sunder is an enchanted hammer to strike the heart to produce the exact volume and quantity of power desired. Keening is an enchanted blade that is used to flay and focus the power that rises from the heart. When Kagranak used these tools on the heart in the Battle of Red Mountain, no one knows what happened, but the Dwemer race disappeared entirely from the mortal world. Lord Nerevar and Lord Dagoth retrieved these tools and didn't know what to do with them. Nerevar asked Dagoth to guard the tools while he went to consult with his counselors, Vivek, Almalexia, and Sothasil. He left and spoke with his 3 counselors, and they decided to return together to Red Mountain to decide what to do. But while Nerevar was gone, Dagoth was tempted and confused by the power of these tools. When Nerevar and the counselors arrived, he refused to give up the tools, claiming that he had sworn to Nerevar to protect them. Then Dagoth fought with Nerevar and the counselors, and was mortally wounded and driven off, and the tools were recovered. Then Nerevar and his counselors decided to take the tools for safekeeping. They all swore a great oath never to use the tools, but after Nerevar's death, Vivek, Almalexia, and Sothasil yielded to temptation. They took these tools themselves and went to Locran's heart, buried within the Red Mountain, and gave themselves divine powers. But Dagoth had not died. We don't know what happened, but this is what we believe. His experiments with Kagranak's tools had joined him to the heart's divine nature in some way, so that he learned to draw power directly from the heart. We conjecture that Dagoth driven by anger and greed, used the heart without caution and restraint, and as a result has become terribly powerful and terribly mad. But the tribunal showed great care and restraint in their use of the tools, and so they were not driven mad, and they did many good things. Nonetheless, the tribunal too appear to have suddenly been corrupted by the heart's power, though more subtly. Kagranak's tools are cursed. Stealing power from the heart of a god is terrible folly and fated to disaster. The tribunal is losing its battle to control the power of the heart. They are sustained by the same tainted power that drives Dagoth mad. They grow weak and cannot protect us from Dagoth but even if they could, would we be wise to worship gods such as these? They conceal the truth from us out of shame. They persecute the Nerevarine and dissident priests out of shame, when they should be welcoming them and enlisting their aid against Dagoth The tribunal have done much good for Morrowind and the Dunmer, but they succumbed to the temptation of Kagranak's tools, and through these tools though these tools may once have seen the instruments of salvation, they now must be seen as instruments of doom.
And then finally we'll catch up on the journal.
"16th of Sun's Dusk, Day 93. The temple may not be so intolerant of differences in opinion, Gilvis Barolo says, but the ordinators under Beryl Sala claim that the threat from Red Mountain and Dagoth can only be resisted with a unified, resolute faith. If the dissident priests could show that they can confront Dagoth more effectively than the ordinators, the temple and people might support the dissident priests. Gilvis Barolo says that faith in the temple's protective power was strong as long as the ordinators, buoyant armigers, and tribunal could contain the blight and Dagoth creatures within the ghost fence. But now travelers and settlements suffer from blight storms and marauding monsters, and the people fear that the temple is losing its ages-old battle with the devil Dagoth Gilvis Barolo says that Dagoth grows stronger while the tribunal grows weaker. He sees the return of Saint Nerevar, even if it is only the spirit of Saint Nerevar, as the best hope for salvation from Dagoth menace. Gilvis Barolo gave me several books about Nerevar. Gilvis Barolo also gave me The Lost Prophecy and The Seven Curses. The Lost Prophecy says the Nerevarine is an outlander. That may surprise the Ashlanders, but it suggests that I may really be the Nerevarine. He also gave me a document based on the Apocrypha called Kagranak's Tools, which reveals the guilty secret behind the tribunal's divine powers. I must bring these lost prophecies to Nabani Masaya as soon as I can. From the Apocrypha, Gilvis Barleo gave me a document called Kagranak's Tools. This document describes the terrible secret that the temple conceals about the true history of the tribunal and corrupt nature of their divine powers. To hide this secret, the temple persecutes the Nerevarine and the dissident priests. Barolo says that the persecution must stop and we must unite against the true enemy, Dagoth The Hieroglypha are the collected priestly writings of the temple. The Apocrypha are the hidden writings, secrets known only at the highest levels of the priesthood and Inquisition. The dissident priests have gathered much of the Apocrypha in Holamayan. One of the chief disputes between the temple and the dissident priests is that the temple hides the truth from its followers. Here's Gilvis Barolo's short interpretation of the Lost Prophecy. An outlander, foreign-born but welcomed as a guest, confronts 7 curses beneath Red Mountain. His hand, blessed by Azura, uses a cursed blade to bring justice to House Dagoth or House Dwemer, or both. Maybe the prophecy was lost because the Ashlanders didn't like the idea of an outlander Nerevarine. Here's Gilvis Barolo's short interpretation of the 7 curses. 7 curses come from House Dagoth or House Dwemer, or both. Fire and ash come from Red Mountain. Flesh is corpus. Ghost, seed, and despair are unclear, but the curse of dreams seems to refer to the recent cases of soul sickness and sleeper attacks in the towns. Finally, the appearance of the 6th house is clearly a sign of a coming crisis, according to Gilvis Barolo. In such troubled times, the Dunmer may turn to the ancient pillars of faith, the ancestors in the Daedra, and the prophetic visions granted by Lord Azura. Then they may look to the Nerevarine, Saint Nerevar reborn, to lead them against the grim armies of Dagothar.
And that is where we will pick things up next week.
All right, I'm listening.
Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.